Got it. Sashi, any thoughts on that one?
I think Puneet nailed it. I think a lot of funds that we are talking to are also thinking on the same lines. But having said that, good quality companies are built during these times, and investors can get the same company 6 months back for a certain valuation, a certain ownership, would get to have a much larger ownership. I think this will fundamentally take into the next few other points that. Founders and companies should be more bothered about having cash in bank and be ready when the markets open up with a lot of capital rather than bother about valuations and all those kind of stuff.
Got it. But isn't that a slightly touchy issue with a lot of founders, Sashi, right? I mean, you don't want to kind of get diluted, particularly at this time when you may not really kind of get a great valuation. So how does one kind of resolve that dilemma? From a business angle, I kind of get it that you do need to have cash in the bank. But if it's going to come at the cost of my dilution to the point where I don't have a meaningful stake in the business, then what's my personal interest to try and raise the capital? So how does an entrepreneur go about resolving this conflict in his mind?
Venkat, I think in last 4 to 5 years, the investor and the founder ecosystem has matured a lot. I think investors also realize the fact that a demotivated founder will not take the company anywhere. So please understand, from investor standpoint, whether it is venture debt or venture capital, they pretty much know that the buck stops at them with them only giving money to the founder. At the end of the day, the founder has to convert that money into valuations. So you can never risk. It's just like a pilot of a flight. You can't risk a demotivated pilot to run a big aeroplane. So I think having said this, it's very simple for people to. Sorry. None of the investors can risk parting their money with a founder whose ability to be incentivized in the long-term success of the business is very low. So I think that realization is coming up very well. I think there are a lot of good case studies that you can find when you Google out in last 4 to 5 years where founders were not interests were not taken care of and how things have gone in a different direction. But having said that, in our case, I can pretty much say all my investors on board have been pretty supportive of what we are doing. To your point, I think founders have to be more realistic and pragmatic about the survival of their business and to see how they can turn around the business the moment the market open up. I think that's a fairly very important question to understand because the moment there are even the slightest of chance of market opening up, there will be flood of companies that go to people like Puneet and venture capital funds for funding. Then the chance of they getting attention span will be much lower. Having said that, you can always take a trade off saying that let me take money at a lower valuation now and be prepared by the time markets open up so that I will be in a better position to scale the business much faster. Instead of wasting time after the markets open up and go back to people like Puneet and get their attention, with who will be spoiled for choice. So I think it's a trade off. But the long answer to the fact is that the investors are much more reasonable these days to understand that they have to motivate founders with right amount of equity.
Got it. So the message that I'm getting from you, Sashi, is that founders should probably leave their insecurities aside, right? Focus on getting the business model right. Be realistic about the expectations on the valuations and go with an open mind to investors, because your belief and your advice is that investors are sensible enough to understand that they don't want to compromise on the motivation level of the founders, and therefore they will find the right via media when it comes to valuation. So that seems to be the big high level advice from your side, Sashi.
Yeah, pretty much.
Got it. Puneet, what has been your experience here? I mean, I'm sure you meet a lot of pilots as well. So, are you seeing happy pilots, or you're seeing demotivated, disgruntled pilots, and how do you kind of resolve that?
I think from the time this lockdown started, kind of spoken to a lot of portfolio companies, people in the ecosystem, just to get a sense of how things are. But I think on founders specific, obviously I want to talk about the founders that are seeing tailwinds here because that's not the point. But when you look at other founders, I think the way everyone is thinking about right now is till the time at least the lockdown comes, is reduce your burn to the minimal, to as low as possible. This could also mean deferring payroll for some time. I'm not saying waive it off or anything, but just defer it for some time. Uh, just trim down the fat. It's a good time to kind of just get a little bit lean and mean, instead of unnecessarily having to burn cash today. So I think most founders are kind of just waiting and watching a bit. I think strategies are getting redefined, not necessarily tactics, depending on the sector again that you're in. So I think the way I think everyone's looking at it is just let the lockdown get over, let business start, and then we'll take a call. But till then, in this period, let's lose the least amount of capital possible.
Got it. Thanks for that, Puneet. So, Puneet, if I can stay with you on, you made a point about the strategy and the business model, etc. From your experience of the investments you already made, are you able to share one or two examples of how some of your investee companies have tweaked their business model? So these companies in their version 2.0 or in their new avatar, how are they likely to be different from what they were before the crisis hit?
Yeah. So I think a few of them are still kind of trying to figure that, given the surprise element with which COVID has taken them. But I think there are a few companies, and I think one, two of them have been also spoken about recently in the public domain. I think the founders of CureFit also came, and spoke to the media around what all they have done. So I think that's a very good example of how people are kind of recalibrating themselves. And if you see the fitness classes that they have today, from the time they started it, they have about 5 lakh people daily active users, who log in every day, do a session, and go back. So I think that's been one of, I think it's a very good example of how people have kind of recalibrated and redefined a few things. And I think that actually is a much larger opportunity for them if they're able to, do completely and be completely digital, because you don't have any rents, any meaningful rents to pay. And I think you just acquire customers online, which, their pros are doing.
Got it. Sashi, any thoughts on how Credar is likely to emerge with in a different avatar post-COVID?
Venkat, I think we have been very fortunate that we are in a sector where the tailwinds are only helping us more. Like what I told you previously, people are shunning public transport, people are shunning to a greater extent shared mobility, people are shunning buying fancy cars and all this kind of stuff. I think we promise low cost mobility, low cost private mobility. So people are only looking at us in more demand. So the demand for our products have just gone a bit in last few weeks. We just started operations in a very small manner in Bangalore, and we see a lot of customers coming back to us asking for bikes. But having said that, we are not seeing the high end of the bikes so much in demand. The budget bikes are in a lot of demand, because even in case of Bangalore, though the markets have opened up, governments have stopped any kind of public transport. So there is no Ola, no Uber, and people who are earlier traveling by either bus or metro or by shared mobility companies have come back to us. I think it's pretty sad that we are celebrating that kind of a tailwind, but having said that, we are not complaining at all.
Got it. So, Sashi, the point you're making is, in your case, you don't really need to reinvent the business model. I mean, you're just saying that just the nature of the crisis is something that will be a positive factor for you once the lockdowns is lifted.
Yeah. In fact, what we have done additionally, in fact, there are a couple of press briefings we have done a couple of days back. The fact that we have completely digitized the entire transaction. What really forced us in the last few weeks is the fact that the customers are not venturing out to retail showrooms like what Puneet was exactly referring to. This gave us a very good opportunity for us to digitize the entire transaction flow from the time a consumer. So we are trying to give the same kind of Amazon or a Flipkart kind of an experience where a consumer can go to our website, choose the bike, and the bike gets delivered to the doorstep without any hassle. So what we have done, unlike your new bike or a new car experience, where a lot of things are done at the government level, in our segment specifically, a lot of things have to be done at a company level. I think that gave us a tremendous opportunity for us to build India's first end-to-end digitized customer transaction flow. And that is really taking us to a next level because customers are finding it easy to sit in the confines of the home and do transaction without stepping out of their showrooms.
Understood. Got it, Sashi. So I think the bottom line from what both of you are saying, Puneet and Sashi, is that this seems to be a great time to be driving internal strategy conversations, coming to some decisions on what your business model should be looking like, preparing for the lockdown to be lifted and the demand to come back. In a sense, COVID is a great leveler, right? I mean, whatever your market shares were, they're all probably kind of down to zero for everybody. And now everyone is kind of going to start off from almost a new start line. So question is, can you be the first and the best off the block? So there is, while there's a lot of gloom and doom, it also looks like that people are going to be more responsive to be able to meet that market demand in a way that the market feels most comfortable consuming it, probably have got an opportunity to scale up faster at the expense of those people who might have been market leaders pre-COVID. So it's something for, I guess, all our participants to kind of take away. And obviously, both Puneet and Sridhar have shared some examples from their perspectives, but how do we kind of take these learnings and implement it in our own businesses is potentially a homework for all of us to kind of carry back, post this session. I can also see a number of questions here on conservation of costs, and there are questions on whether on people costs and whether advertising expenses should continue, etc. I think the way we have tended to look at this is to say, take a definition on what is core expense, right? And what is core expense in your company could be very different from what is core expense in somebody else's company. Whatever is non-core, I think has got to be ruthlessly slashed. I think decisive leadership is required in terms of defining what is non-core and getting rid of those expenses in order to conserve the cash. I think both Puneet and Shashi have made the point, and while today's conversation is about raising liquidity, so we're kind of talking a little bit more on the balance sheet side. It doesn't take away from the need and the responsibility of all of us as founders and managers of the company to be operationally extremely efficient. So rather than take a lens on this on a type of expense or a functional or a departmental basis, maybe there is a case to kind of look at whether that cost is actually productive in terms of an ROI and absolutely critical to keep your operations on slow burn, or it's not required. If it's not required, let's just drop it out. I can see several questions that are kind of specific to industries. There are questions on rural tourism. There is something on electric delivery, on Segway type electric two-wheelers. So I'm going to refrain from very specific questions like these, but probably kind of pick up on some of the more thematic questions, which could be of benefit to the larger audience. One of the questions that came up is, whether there is going to be a difference in the way in which a funder is looking at a startup vis-a-vis working with, say, a company with some track record. So is that a criteria at all when it kind of comes to funding at this time, Puneet?
You mean a founder having a track record?
I mean the business being a startup versus the business being an SME, which has got some kind of a runway or some kind of a track record. I mean, is the duration for which the company has operated a criteria at all when it comes to funding during these times?
Yeah, for us, not really. I think what we will rather look out for is has the company got a product market fit? So we look out for that. Now that PMF, could have happened as early or as late, but we will look for PMF and some form of junior capital to support the debt. Because I think the only distinction, I think, where people kind of many times get it wrong when they think of debt is that they never get the difference between a leverage and over leverage, and there is no formula to that, and hence the grayness that comes in because all capital is not good capital. You have to balance a capital structure. If you look at all our corporates, right, you look at the Anil Ambanis, the Kingfishers, and everybody, right, they've all gone because of over leveraging. And that is where I think the fundamental difference comes. Saying that, okay, when you are looking at survival money, I'm not sure if debt is the right answer for you, because what's going to happen is if a few things don't play out, your downward journey is going to start even faster. So don't think of all capital as, in that manner. Think of it as, more capital that you need as cushion, because the best borrowers for all lenders are people who don't really need the money. I think that's where a little bit of distinction needs to be there, because many times we kind of tend to get mixed up with it. But yeah, at least from our perspective, just to answer that, we will look at PMF and some form of junior capital to support the debt.
Sashi, one of the challenges while raising money in these kind of times is how do you put a set of logical projections forward? Right? I mean, most of us don't know what's going to happen next week or next month in our businesses. And yet, when you go out and raise funding, whether it's equity or debt, you still need to provide a set of projections. So, any thoughts on how did you go about doing it when you raise funding for Credar?
I think what really worked in our favor is that the demand for two-wheelers first were supported by B2B businesses. In the run-up to this COVID situation and all through the COVID situation, a lot of last-mile delivery companies were struggling to hire more and more delivery partners. And in those kind of situation, our two-wheelers were coming in handy. So when we were raising the money from venture debt companies, the pitch was very simple. We said one of the largest segments which will find it difficult to scale would be the companies which are supplying, delivering products and to the end consumers. And the largest population of those, whether delivery partners or delivery boys, can't be scaled just like that, because having an asset and having a human staff is very different. So a lot of those companies, whether it's Big Basket, like so Big Basket, Dunjo, and Farmeasy, they were seeing huge demand for products, but lack of delivery partners who don't have bikes themselves was becoming a tailwind for our business. So our investors saw through this opportunity, and they're willing to write a check to help us get those kind of bikes, more like inventory financing for us. So just to put what Puneet was saying, we didn't raise a typical venture debt. We raised more like a asset financing for us, because in our business case it's very simple that if the asset financing goes very well, which meets the demand of our products, then it makes a very strong case for anyone looking at it.
Understood. There are also several questions here, Sashi, on how to do equity fundraise, etc. And a lot has been said and written about the importance of how a founder needs to weave a story. When he and create an excitement among the investor community about why the investor should be putting in money. So in today's environment, I mean, is the focus still on how the story is sounding and looking, or is the focus a little bit more on how reliable the business plan or the model or the Excel projection is looking? I mean, is there a change in the way in which you would try and approach an investor in this market?
Venkat, very, very strange. If any, the need for a great storyteller has just only exaggerated in this situation. Because any any amount of Excel sheet gymnastics or circus is not going to land you in the good books of the investor. So I think, if any, you need a really good convincing founder who can tell you, okay, boss, after this lockdown is done, why you should invest in me. Versus a person who comes with the Excel sheet to invest like Puneet, he will not get convinced, because any amount of assumptions is not going to make that projection much better. But if you are able to convince an investor saying that you are a person who can nimble-footedly take calls which are much more audacious in nature and which will fundamentally change the way the market would be responding to you, I think investors tend to believe. So a storyteller would become much, much, much more important in this kind of a situation, rather than a guy who would put up an Excel spreadsheet and try to convince people, because they're not getting convinced anyway. Unless and until you're operating in a space or segment where your ability to predict the cash flows go in hand with the market sentiment. And there are very, very, very few segments which will have those kind of. And those segments would have taken that call long time before.
Long time back, sure. So Puneet, if I can come to you and maybe pose this tough question to you, what kind of stories are you willing to believe in, and what stories you are not willing to believe in?
Look, I can't agree more with Sasi on this. I think it's the time where storytelling needs to be at its peak. Now, when we say storytelling, obviously we don't mean a lot of gas in a way, but I think what when we look at a company or when we are talking to a founder, we're somewhere trying to figure even the conviction the founder has. And conviction just doesn't mean where a guy keeps on saying 10 times the same thing. I think the reasoning, and if there is data to support what he says, I think that helps. But I think what we're looking at is he really, meaning it, or is he like flipping it? And you can come to know that in maybe 10, 15 minutes. So yeah, I think I completely agree with Sasi that it's probably the time where you have to have good storytellers.
Got it. Thank you, Puneet. I'm conscious that we're kind of approaching the end of 1 hour, so I would definitely like to get some closing comments. So if we can start with you, Sashi, in maybe 30 seconds to kind of sum up what is the high level advice that you have to the participants. And I'm also curious at a personal level to know, we talked about reinventing the business model for the company, etc. But tell us also a little bit about how Sashi is going to emerge as a Sashi 2.0 in a different avatar post-COVID. I mean, what are you doing at a personal level?
I think as a company, we are fundamentally being paranoid about every cost line item that we have in our P&L balance sheet, and we are fundamentally hotly debating between me, my partner Nikhil, why should that cost even exist in us, and we are also trying to understand whether that cost that we are incurring today is more of an expense or as an investment. Any line item which we don't consider it as an investment, we are just letting it go. I think one important point which Puneet has just alluded in the previous conversation is how founders are handling the way their workforce would be let go. I think a lot of the storytelling will come in how you will convince your key team members to stick with you. And if the founder doesn't have the inherent flamboyant ability to convince his team members to stick with you for next 6 to 12 months during this tumultuous position, he will not be in a position to even get convincing answers to an investor. So I think that's a very important understatement to know that the founder should have a great personality and a storytelling ability to be able to convince his team members. And second, all the assumptions that you are making for next 6 months, please multiply by a factor of 3 and assume that you will stay on for 3 more months. So we believe that for next 12 to 18 months, the market is gonna be like this. And if it turns around any farther than this or any earlier than, you will be the beneficiary for that.
Got it. At a personal level, do you want to take that question, Sashi? I mean, what are you doing to emerge as a different or a better individual?
Pretty difficult to answer, Venkat. But what we are as a at a personal level, I'm trying to be as paranoid as possible about everything that is happening around us. When I say that I make 100 rupees personal investment, I would have said that I would have deferred it for next 12 months. So conserving the cash and cash is the king is exactly the same way I'm maintaining my own balance sheet internally at P&L point.
Got it. Thank you so much, Sashi. Would you like to provide your closing comments and also what Puneet 2.0 looks like?
Oh yeah, I think this is the most interesting part. I think for it's definitely going to be first conserve cash and stay agile, be transparent, have a good intent, continue having that. Try finding outgoing employees a home where they can possibly get the next job. Renegotiate a few contracts, move into revenue sharing arrangements if that makes sense for now. But I think from a broader standpoint, most companies will have to go back to the drawing board and redefine maybe the North Star metric. Because I think as COVID stays, however, I think businesses will fundamentally change in the way they are operating. So I think redefine the North Star metric could be one area that companies may want to look at. But yeah, on a personal side, look, I'm more of I'm cautiously optimistic. I think as half the country is doing, I'm also learning to cook. But I think apart from that, I'm also looking at conserving cash on the personal side. I sold all my stock portfolio on January 7th of this year. I think this was somewhere waiting to happen. And my wife and everybody kind of really kind of threw stones at me for doing that. But now I'm coming out smiling. But no, look, I think it's the time to just conserve cash and preserve capital at this point.
Got it. Thank you, Puneet. It's been lovely hearing you and getting the benefit of your insights. I think a quick sum up for the audience, another 1 minute or so. So clearly, the message from both our panelists seems to be that look, the providers of capital are open for business, whether it's on the venture debt side or on the venture capital side. However, the bar has gone up, so the level of scrutiny that one would expect companies who are looking to raise capital will have to be prepared for that. Just as a very general rule, and there will always be exceptions to this, I think businesses that are in roti, kapda, makan are more likely to get funding as compared to those that are in discretionary. Businesses that are not burning cash at a gross margin level are more likely to get funding as compared to those that are burning cash. Providers of capital are currently more worried about the return of capital itself and not just about the return on the capital employed. In terms of the valuation, Sashi's input was that probably is the best time for valuations in angel or seed rounds, because COVID or no COVID is not going to be that much of an impact in the way in which the provider of the capital is going to value the company. The other key point that came out is the fact that promoters don't need to be insecure about dilution. If the need of the business is to kind of go out and raise capital, which I think will probably be the case for 99% of the business today, let's do the right thing by arming ourselves with that liquidity so that we can see through the next 12 to 18 months of pain. And if that means a dilution, so be it. And let's go with the confidence that the investors are now a more mature community, and they'll probably not let you lose motivation in the business by diluting it down too much. We also heard Puneet talk about not all capital being good capital. So be very clear about why you're looking to raise the capital, and also be very careful about the capital structure or the capital mix that you're looking to raise. In any case, trying to raise capital to purely fund OPEX losses is not a great idea per se. If you need to do it, just make sure that your OPEX burn is down to the absolute bare minimum. Which brings us to the cost of costs. And I think Sashidhar very nicely said that you've got to be paranoid. I think that's a word that he used. You've got to be absolutely brutal, be prepared to take tough decisions. But while doing it, as Puneet said, be very, very clear about your intent. Do it in a way that is appropriate, that is fair, that's reasonable, that is very respectful. And don't forget to communicate regularly, transparently, consistently to stakeholders, both internally and externally. Yeah, so those seem to be the key highlights of today. I do hope that all of you enjoyed the session. I really would like to thank both Sashi and Puneet, not just for your time and your very valuable insights, but also to keep your answers very succinct and crisp. We were able to kind of cover a lot of questions, thanks to that. Yeah, so thank you once again, Sashi, Puneet. I'm sure we'd kind of love to have you on some of our future panels, and I'd like to thank Ty for this wonderful opportunity to bring this webinar together, and of course all of you participants who have been great, and you kind of kept it very lively to several questions that you put in on the chat box. Yeah, thank you all. Over to you, Shabnam, in case you'd like to come in.
Thank you, Venkat, Sashi, and Puneet for the insightful session, and thank you, participants. We do have another session starting at 3 o'clock, so stay tuned for that.
Okay, thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much.